Give yourself a chance. You know, so often in this program, we sit in this room and we don't give ourselves a chance. We're used to getting it right now. Do whatever it takes. I hear people put in the same effort into getting high that you do in your sobriety. I'm talking 1/100th of that effort, and I'll remain sober and I'll have a different life. And you know what? Continue to help others. Just thank God Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob didn't wait a year to be sober to help somebody else.
That was Ken Rivord, and this is the SHAIR Podcast.
It's time for the SHAIR Recovery Podcast, where we bring you amazing life-changing success stories from addicts and alcoholics all over the world who share their inspiring journey in recovery. And now, here's your host,
Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of the SHAIR Podcast. And today we have Ken Rivord joining us on the show, and what an honor and a privilege it was to have such an amazing person join us to share his story. Ken flew all the way from Minnesota specifically to share his experience, strength, and hope in person with me in my home. It was an absolute honor. And most of all, Ken's story is one of the most powerful stories I have recorded, and I can't wait for you guys to listen. So without further ado, let's dive into Ken's story, but first, a quick message from our sponsor. Picture this. You're at work or your office or running your business, and you feel confident, fulfilled, successful. Now, imagine this. Going home after work and feeling safe, comfortable, and relaxed. And now, imagine being with your family and feeling happiness, joy, and love. Now, how does that sound to you? How does that make you feel? Now imagine that every single day you feel confident, successful, fulfilled, safe, comfortable, relaxed, happiness, joy, and love. Can you picture it? Can you imagine what that would feel like? Of course you can. My name's Omar Pinto, and if you're listening to this right now and saying to yourself, that's the life I want for me, then go to www.sharespace.net right now and schedule a free consultation with me today. ShareSpace. It's time to believe in yourself again. And for those of you that are looking for the perfect recovery gift to give to yourself or to a friend in recovery, then go to www.allrecoveryrings.com. At All Recovery Rings, you can have any recovery medallion beautifully transformed into a ring you can wear on your finger. All you need to do is select the medallion of your choice, submit your ring size, and All Recovery Rings will create the perfect ring for you. So go to www.allrecoveryrings.com and order your recovery ring today. And if you'd like to support the SHAIR Podcast by making a donation, then go to the website www.theshairpodcast.com. Remember to spell SHAIR, SHAIR. Go to the top right corner of the website where it says donate, or click on any of the yellow donate buttons throughout the website and make your donation today. And for those of you who love listening to the SHAIR Podcast and want to enhance your recovery, then join us in our SHAIR Facebook private group, the SHAIR Recovery Network. In this free Facebook private group, you will meet thousands of people in recovery that are loving, caring, and being of service. If you're struggling in your recovery or you're struggling in life, then this might be the perfect place for you. The purpose of the SHAIR Recovery Network is to discuss recovery in all of its facets, in all of its pathways, in a way that is attractive and all-inclusive. So to join us in this Facebook private group, go to Facebook, go to the search bar, type in SHAIR Recovery Network, and our private Facebook group will pop right up. So join us today. And if you haven't done so already, don't forget to leave us a 5-star rating and review on iTunes. It's one of the best ways to show your support for the podcast. And speaking of amazing reviews, our next review is from Trent Mills. The title is, What Can I Do Better or Different This Time? Oh, I wanted to thank you for using your talents as a great storyteller and attractive personality and harnessing that into a way to be of service every day to myself, and I've no doubt to many others across the globe. The range of people you have on the show with varying practices and lengths of time really make this feel like an all-inclusive community. I had some time and had a relapse, and then had some time, and then another insidious, slow relapse. The gift of desperation and willingness has been a major theme this time around, when I hit a massive spiritual bottom along with the physical. This time around, the thought of what can I do differently or better this time has been a constant, aside from showing up for service, meetings, step work, etc. I want to be able to do the stuff outside better, different. Stumbling on and listening to this podcast every day on hikes, runs, or just in the car has been an incredibly impactful way for me to help extend the rooms into my daily life. It's been such a gift and has brought a new level of feeling connected. I owe a lot of gratitude to you and the network of miraculous people willing to share their experience, strength, and hope. I rue the day I run out of episodes to binge. So podcast on, my friend. I wish you all the best. Warmest, Trent. Wow, what an incredible message. And if you guys look at the iTunes reviews, SHAIR has now reached 323 5-star ratings and reviews to date. The impact that we are having in the world blows my mind. So I can only say this. I can only say that God has gifted me with an opportunity to help thousands of people all over the world. And it is an absolute honor, a privilege, and a blessing. I am not the well, but I sure do enjoy being the pipe every once in a while. Trent, God bless you, and HP baby. Now, a quick message from Transitions Daily, and then on to the show. Would you like to join a free, anonymous online group that offers a daily topic email with popular recovery resources, accompanied by a secret Facebook group for discussion? Then go to dailyaaemails.com for more information about Transitions Daily. And don't forget to share dailyaaemails.com with friends, in meetings, and with sponsees in recovery. What up, Ken? Thanks for joining us, man.
Thanks for having me, Omar.
All right, so this is SHAIR Podcast interview with Ken Rivord, take 2. So, how you feeling, brother?
Man, I'm living the dream.
We just had a kick-ass breakfast. How was that?
That was absolutely amazing. I forget, I can't really say the name. What was it again?
It was the typical Costa Rican breakfast, gallo pinto, with fried eggs, plantains.
Yes.
All right, and natilla, which is Costa Rica's version of sour cream.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
Absolutely phenomenal.
And a café con leche.
Yes.
Coffee and milk. So I'm gonna set this up for you guys just for a minute, just to kind of give you an idea of like what we went through. So yesterday, Ken and I had an interview, right? And Ken Rivord is somebody that I met in Minnesota. I was up there sharing my story, right? My good friend Christopher Lee Falk and Charlie from the Way Out podcast had invited me. He had a panel discussion. I shared my story. Ken came up to me after the meeting or after I shared, and he said, "Dude, I want to share my story on your podcast." And I'm like, "All right, we'll set it up." He goes, "No, man, but I'm doing it in Costa Rica." And this was last year.
6 months ago.
6 months ago, yeah. Right? And so
you looked at me like, yeah, okay. Bro.
Yeah, totally. I was just about to say, you read my mind. I was like, I hear that all the time.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm coming down to Costa Rica. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
See you down there, right?
Right.
Then Ken came at me like a pit bull. Like every month, he was like, "Yo, dude, so I'm coming down, right?" And I was like, "Oh, okay, all right, no, but seriously, I'm coming down, right? So I need to call you." So we had conversations. I sent him an email on how to get down here, but there was one thing that was for sure: Ken was coming down.
Yep.
And the whole idea for him coming to Costa Rica, because I remember I messaged him back. And I said, "Hey, Ken, so what's your purpose for coming to this trip?" He's like, "My number one purpose is to do this podcast interview.
Yep.
My second purpose is to celebrate my 6th year in Costa Rica. I've said I wanted to come down to Costa Rica, and I'm going to come down to Costa Rica."
Yep.
And so that was the main objective. And so we had planned to do the interview when he landed.
Right.
And that's when the shit got real.
Yes, it's been a never-ending, interesting story of anything that could go wrong would go wrong.
So to just to finish, because I'm gonna wrap that thought that he just said, everything that could go wrong did go wrong, including the fact that the sole purpose for him coming down to Costa Rica was to record his interview. And yesterday, we recorded an interview.
No, we didn't quite record it.
Yes, correct. Correct. We semi-recorded an interview that knocked my socks off. And then when I went to go transfer the data onto my computer, it was gone.
Yep.
And so we're both just like staring at each other like, it's got to be in there somewhere. Like but did you check all the files? Right? Did you check everything? Dude, right? And I was devastated. You know. But here's the cool thing, right? Like everything that could go wrong did go wrong. But here's what I took away from this thing. I took a lot of things away from the interview, right? I took notes. But it was like, this is what I came down here to do. And I said, well, if you're down, we're going to just record this thing again. And that's what we're doing right now.
Right.
So I want to start differently this time.
Okay.
All right. So I want to start differently. And I want to talk a little bit about what your experience was like here in Costa Rica, because this is where it all, like, I want to come down to Costa Rica. I want to record my interview. So right from the beginning, right, it was crazy. So I was in the middle of a training. I'm training to be certified. Well, I'm already certified now as an NLP practitioner and hypnotherapist, timeline therapy practitioner. But I was right knee deep in it. Ken and I were supposed to do the interview. And he was like, and he's like, I want to be there. And I'm like, dude, we got to do it at the end. He's like, all right, so you can come stay with me. And then he gets here, and now Ken, right? I want you to tell us exactly what happened when you got here.
Well, so we landed at the airport, and we get driven to the car rental place where I had booked through Expedia, and I was supposed to get car insurance through Expedia. I get here, and they're like, "Yeah, sorry about your bad luck. That isn't even gonna happen. You need to buy this insurance or this insurance in Costa Rica to make it valid. You're not leaving here with the car without the car insurance." So it was like $511 plus a $500 deposit, and I'm sitting there and my phone doesn't work, so I can't call Omar. He finally gives me the Wi-Fi, and I'm calling Omar. I'm telling him, hey man, they tell me my one hotel is 2 hours this way and the other one's 4 hours this and that. And he was like, dude, I gave you 2 suggestions. Well, I, kind of skimmed through the email. I booked both hotels. Just happened to be on opposite sides of the country. Yeah, so there we start, and me and my girlfriend were frustrated. We're like, what's going on? My internet isn't working. So this guy at the car rental place, he had me download this maps.me, which works offline. Yeah, we're trying to get out there. I don't speak Spanish. I don't read Spanish. But this GPS takes me to this neighborhood. Now, I may not speak Spanish and I may not read Spanish, but I know the hood when I see it. Razor wire fences, people are serving crack in the fields. So then the GPS takes me up this mountain pass, and I'm vertical. I'm talking to people that I know have never left that patch on that mountain ever in their life. I'm talking about Manuel Antonio, which is where I'm supposed to be. And he's like, yeah, San Antonio. And I'm like, no, not San Antonio. And so anyways, I stopped at this place called La Mission, which I thought was like a mission because I'm thinking, there might be somebody here that speaks English, and it turned out to be a hospital. And, one of the things I want to say about Costa Rica is the people here are amazing and helpful. Don't read TripAdvisor. They will tell you you're not going to make your connecting flights. It's one of the most 10 dangerous places to vacation in the world. And, what I found was some nice people. And he drove me 20 minutes through traffic. I'm going to tell you right now, you think you deal with traffic in America. Here, the lines are suggestions. They are not. Everybody is going 100 kilometers plus an hour. That was something that took some getting used to, too, is kilometers, not miles. But you know what? So it took us maybe 5 hours. We had to ride through ride through a mountain pass. Semis coming 100 miles an hour over the yellow lines, darkness. We've been in the car for 5 hours. I'm frustrated. You know, at some points we both were like, God, we just want to go home. Like, this is really hard, you know? But we kept pushing on and kept driving and kept driving. We finally get to our hotel at 9:00 at night. We had landed at like noon, 1 o'clock, maybe something like that. So we go to bed and we get up. And a lot of you guys that are friends with me on Facebook saw my pictures, you know, and it's kind of the same thing as my recovery. It was darkness before the light. Dude, when I woke up and saw that ocean and saw that mountain and saw them jungles right outside my door, I was like, wow, this is amazing. You know, it was a spiritual experience. And it's like my recovery. As I look back over my recovery at how dark it was, and then when I woke up to life, how amazing and beautiful it's been, you know. It's been an experience. And then to book hotels on opposite sides of the country. Really? So they wouldn't cancel my hotel. They told me they were going to take the whole amount that I had paid. So we got up at 4:00 in the morning and we drove across the country to the Caribbean side to Puerto Viejo. Right? Is it almost right? I slaughter it.
Puerto Viejo, but anyone listening will know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so we get over there. We drove 7.5 or 8 hours straight through. You know, and that's another thing, you know, in the program. Like, what are you willing to do? You know what I mean? Like, how hard are you willing to push? And we pushed and we got there. And at first, you know, it was another culture shock. These opposite sides of this country are totally different. Totally different, you know, and we get over there and I'm uncomfortable for the first day or, you know, 2 days. And, you know, we settled into the people and we settled into the environment. And I will tell you, it was my favorite place. You know, it was my favorite place. Traveled through the jungle, through the national parks. They canceled our tour because it was raining. You know, we found the park on our own. You know, like, we just continued to push through, you know. And when you push through and you put in the effort, amazing things happen. So that was my basic deal in Costa Rica so far. And then, you know, of course, you know, all the people trying to sell me drugs. There was probably 20 to 40 every day. I had people running up to me on the streets with handfuls of drugs asking me, come on, I'll give you a free taste. You know, I'm like, nah, no más mota, no más cocaína, no más cerveza. They just couldn't believe it because here I am, this big white dude with full tattoos all the way across my chest. You know, I just looked like I just walked out of the penitentiary and now I'm on vacation and I need some drugs.
Not for nothing, but... You know, yes. Yeah. Right. You look like like you just walked off the set of American History X.
That's so funny.
And you know, and that's why I wanted to start this interview because, you know, last night I felt a lot of personal vulnerability, right? It was a lot of I failed in this interview. I failed, Ken, you know, and it was a cathartic moment for me because it allowed me to get in touch with a lot of different feelings. I knew that I was emotionally spent because I was exhausted.
Me too.
I was exhausted after the interview. It was so impactful and so to pick up the momentum again, right? It was like I started thinking about it and I go, wow, this just continues to be that metaphor for Ken's recovery. Right. Like, no matter what, like, I booked in the wrong hotels. I'm going to drive across country because I'm going to enjoy my trip no matter what. You know, I'm going to, you know, get to San Jose and I'm going to get with O and I'm going to do this interview because that's what I came here to do and I'm going to do it no matter what. Right. And I think that so many of us, when we come into recovery, right, we're used to, like, I don't feel good, I don't feel comfortable, I'm going to do this, and then boom, I'm going to feel different. Right. And I want that instant gratification.
So that's what got me here.
Yeah.
That's what got me here. You know, was living that way. You know, I made a lot of rash emotional, impulsive decisions. And you know what I've learned today? Because the longer that you stay sober, life shows up for real. 30, 60, 90 days, and I'm not even talking about the pink cloud. I'm just talking about the accolades that you get when you're first sober. Everybody's glad you're off the needle. They're glad you're not stealing their shit. You know what I mean? They're glad you're not lying to them. They're glad you're not dead. They're glad you're not in jail. You know what I mean? But that stuff dissipates after a while, and they're like, well, what are you going to do now? You know what I mean? And then, you get a job, you start working, you start doing all the things that all the normal people in their life have been doing. And you want to know what? Them accolades, they're no longer there. Like my mom says all the time, and it used to piss me off. She's like, welcome to the real world. You know what I mean? And now, I say that on a regular basis because it's true. Life shows up. And then at that point, it's like, now you better be doing it for yourself. You better be doing it because the other path has ended. Now this new path is before you. I know what all those other things look like. I know what prison looks like. I know what jail looks like. I know what abuse looks like. I know about being abused. I know about being the abuser. I know about all those things. But the opportunities that I've been given in recovery to be able to come to Costa Rica, I've been to multiple countries. I've been on cruises. I've had the opportunity to speak. I've had the opportunity to do so many things. And it's so different. This road is so different than the road that I traveled before.
Well, so before you came to Costa Rica and, went through this amazing journey to get to where we're sitting here right now, tell us a little bit about what your normal daily routine looks like at home.
And you know what? I'm so grateful that we redid this. You want to know why? Because I missed the most important factor. And I tried to teach. So I've had 2 guys from my hometown that I brought down. I've helped to get jobs. I've helped them get their license. They were on the streets. These have been my friends for a long time. And they did things for me when I was on the streets. So this was my opportunity to show them a different way of life. But they had these grand ideas. It's like these grand ideas of I'm going to take this shake and I'm going to lose weight, or I'm going to, keep switching jobs because I'm going to find that job that just fits and I'm going to make so much money and it's going to be good. And I'm like, well, how about you get up every day and make your bed for 2 weeks? Let's start there. You know what I mean? Because if you can't get up every day and make your bed, you're going to have a really hard time doing anything else in life. So one of the key things for me when I get up is I set up my day. I don't get up right before I got to go to work and run out the door. I get up a couple hours before. I drink my coffee. If I didn't pack my food on the night before, then I pack it that morning. I make sure my food is ready to go. I make sure my water is ready to go. I make sure I take all my vitamins. I do all that. I make my bread. Then I go to the gym. I go to the gym and I get in my body and I get in the moment and I relieve a lot of stress. And it's probably saved a lot of people's lives when I go lift weights. I ain't even gonna lie. Because I get that angst out of me. And then when I come home, before I go to work, I pray. And I sit on my bed and I sit there and I remind myself that I'm grateful for my life. And then I read A Promise of a New Day, which I actually was going to show you that book. You got to check out this meditation book. It is the most there's some times where I just sit there and I just am blown away.
Do you have it here?
Yes, I do. It's not a religious, it's not a 12-step thing, but it incorporates all of those things in the power of the Spirit. And I read that. And then you know what? Then I go about my day being responsible. I go to work every day, whether I feel like doing it or not. You know what I mean? I have a job that's extremely difficult for me emotionally and mentally, but you want to know what? It's where I'm at right now, and it's what I do to make sure that I'm responsible, that I can pay my bills, that I can do, and I don't make rash decisions. I don't make emotional decisions. I sit it out, I take steps, and then I move forward. So in a nutshell, that's how I set up my day, but in a longer view, that's how I set up my life. I set up my life by doing those things so that I can live in this moment, but I can also make plans for the future.
I love it. So, and then, the other thing that I ask always is, how do you maintain that conscious contact with a higher power? And I like to emphasize that because even though people incorporate that when I'm interviewing them as part of their daily routine, right? I like to know how their spiritual condition and their connection with their higher power has impacted their life and how it impacts their life on a daily basis. So how is that for you?
Well, this is the thing. So, prayer is the act of talking and meditation is the act of listening. Now, I've gotten to a place in life, yes, I don't sit for that long. I used to do transcendental meditation, 20 minutes, all that kind of stuff. For me, it's walking around and being intuitive to the whole world talking to me. And I talk a lot. We all know I talk a lot. But you want to know what? I pay attention. I pay attention to those who are around me. What are they saying? How are they showing up? How are they reacting to me? Because how they are reacting to me is a pretty important gauge of my internal condition. So if I'm paying attention to my internal condition and how the world is reacting to me, to how I'm showing up, for me, that's true meditation. That's true actually being connected to everything else that's around me. I used to be a religious person. I would say that I'm no longer a religious person. I would say I'm a spiritual person because I truly believe that everything is connection. I believe that all religions are part of it. I believe that they're all part of the true connection. And what they teach is put away the old man, transform yourself to the new man, and allow that new man to give to others. And so that's how I stay connected to this power.
What was that one? It was either a Bible scripture or I know it was in a movie because I doubt I read it in the scriptures. It was something about, right? I no longer, when I was a child, I did childish things.
When I became a man, I put away childish things.
Right. And I think that there's a fine line between losing ourselves in what we feel we need to do, right, as a man or as an adult. Right, and we disconnect too much from that child inside of it because that child inside of us knows who we are.
Right.
It is our truest, most authentic version of ourselves, and it has always known who we are and what we're destined to be in this world.
Yeah, I believe that the process of recovery is a process of removal. It's not a process of addition. Because when I was born as a baby, I was perfect. And then I started walking about in the world, and people started doing things to me.
Yes.
So as people started doing things to me, I started strapping on this armor.
Yep.
This armor around my soul, this armor around my heart that says, you're not going to hurt me. You're done hurting me. In fact, if you come near me, I'm going to hurt you. And at that point, what I realized was the process of recovery is a process of coming home. It's stripping all those things that are stopping me from being connected to myself and connected to those people who are around me. And this process of coming home has been painful at times. It's been difficult. But you want to know what? I'm more me today than I have ever been in my whole life.
And that's what's important. And it's going to get more and more real as the years go by and as we strip away more and more of that armor because it's not necessary, right? Yeah. If you put yourself around where you're supposed to be, and what I mean by that is like once you recognize, connect with your purpose, your destiny, who you were always meant to be, then you can strip away all that armor. You can step into vulnerability, right? And you can embrace the people around you, which is a lot of what I wanted to dive into as well in our interview. But before we go there, just real quick, because this is a funny part too. What is your anniversary date and how much clean time do you have?
So my anniversary date is 4/20 of 2012. And I have 6 years of sobriety.
That we celebrated
on 4/20.
On 4/20, it is April 26th right now. So 4 days. This is 6 days after his anniversary. So congratulations, brother.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
And exactly where were you when you celebrated that 6 years?
I was in Manuel Antonio, kicking it on the ocean, having monkeys throw mangoes at me. And then celebrating with a double lobster dinner with steak, and it was like a 3-course meal.
Wow.
Absolutely phenomenal.
That's
Check
the way
out
to
the
do it.
pictures on my Facebook page.
And so, yes. And so tell us now, how old you were the first time you drank or used drugs, and more importantly, how they made you feel.
I was 10 years old. I told you this yesterday. So, my drinking from the very first time I drank, it characterized my using the whole time that I used. So I had 2 Dixie cups full of green cream to mint, which goes down absolutely phenomenal. And I mixed it with, I drank about a half of a gallon of wine. It was about a quarter gallon. And I told you this, I kept pulling it out and I kept drinking it and I kept putting it back because I knew I needed to stop, because the more that I drank, I knew that I was going to get in trouble because they were going to notice that I was missing, but it didn't matter. Once I got that feeling, I couldn't stop. I kept drinking, and that literally characterized my use my whole life. No matter what the consequences are, I'm not going to stop. Here I am 10 years old, and that effect is so great. It has so much power over me that I know I'm going to be in trouble, and I can't stop.
So here's the part of the interview where I turn the show over to Ken, and he shares his experience, strength, and hope with us. The battle against drugs and alcohol, the wreckage it caused in his life when he hit rock bottom, and his journey into recovery up until today. And there's a story that his higher power wants him to tell, and he's going to tell it right now.
Yeah. Obviously, and I was explaining this yesterday, the story that I told wasn't the one that whoever needed to hear this interview needed to hear, and the egotistical part of me said, man, that is the best I've ever constructed my story and put it together in a seamless fashion. I got up from the table and I was like, I did this. And Omar's like, ha ha, sorry about your bad luck, bud.
Dude, it was off the chain.
Yeah. So, again, I talk about the characterization of my use, and I talk about the abuse, by a very young age, I had been sexually abused. I had been physically abused. When I was even younger, I remember being so hungry that I drank Pepto-Bismol. I had to be rushed to the hospital and have my stomach pumped. And I share this, because it's my story. I don't think that it's any more or any less than anyone else that's in recovery. These are the extremes that happened in my life. And as I walked through my life, I wanted to cover the pain. The pain of not feeling good enough, the pain of being abused and all these things. I hear the debate all the time, like, was I born a drug addict or an alcoholic, or did I become a drug addict and an alcoholic? And I don't know. What I do know is that I walked through my life and I wanted to be something. And what I wanted to be was the best at whatever I did. I was going to be the best drug addict. Now, obviously, all this stuff is in retrospect, but I was always striving to be the best, and I was told all the time, great guy, highly intelligent, doesn't apply himself. But what they meant was I didn't apply myself to what they thought it was that I should be in life. And this walk in recovery, what it has taught me is about being who I am, no matter what. Taking into account other people's feelings, but realizing there's no bunk beds and caskets. So as I continued on my life, by the time I was 13, I'm smoking weed every day. By the time I'm 17, I'm drinking every day or as many times a day as I can get. By the time I'm 19, I'm shooting dope, every chance I could get. So my using was always like when I was younger, I won't do that or I won't do that. But by the time I was 19 years old and I'm sitting in my first treatment center, I'm sitting around the circle and these old timers, they're talking about shooting dope. And I'm like, I'm going to do that, and within a couple, it was either a month or 2 months, I started shooting dope, and I began to stick a needle in my arm every chance that I could, so, if you want to backtrack just a little bit, 17 years old, I committed my first felony, I didn't catch a case. I always laugh when people talking about I caught a case, like it was floating around in the air somewhere and I just picked it up.
Like it was a cold.
Yeah. No, I committed a felony, it was a robbery gone bad and I kicked in the guy's door and I beat him with a hammer, and I beat him pretty bad, and I remember sitting in court my first time. I'm 17 in Wisconsin. You're automatically waived into adult court. And I remember my mom being there and my dad being there. And I remember the assistant DA getting up and saying, "We believe that Mr. Rivord intended on murdering Mr. Linder." So I was in court that day facing 15 years in prison. 10 years for entering the threshold of another's dwelling without their permission, and 5 years for aggravated battery with intent to bodily harm. And this lady gets up and she says, "We believe that Mr. Rivord intended on murdering Mr. Linder. We'd like to charge him with first-degree attempted murder." And thank God the judge looked at her and just slammed her. Like, we're here for a probable cause hearing for these 2 charges, so if you want to charge him with this, you better go back, do an investigation, and bring me a new charge. And I was like, but one of the things that's crazy is, so my whole life I was filled with fear, anxiety, worry, and I didn't understand those things. I wasn't in tune with them, But I remember my mom saying afterwards how scared she was when the judge sentenced that. And, sitting here today, I don't remember being scared. I don't remember at that particular point being scared. This lady just got up and is talking about first-degree attempted murder. And I don't know if anybody knows anything about the Wisconsin penal system, but I'm going to tell you this right now. When they sentence you in Wisconsin, it's real. You're going to do some time.
Ugh.
So I walked out of there and I ended up on paper and I did time. I started doing time, and I'm locked up with people, that have tied people up to trees and shot them in the head. I'm locked up with people that, have a large disregard for human life. And, this whole journey, I talk about that piece about coming home. I wanted to be hard, all while inside I was so soft. I can remember emulating these ideas and these actions, and people could tell. They could tell that I was trying too hard, when I was locked up. And I got into a lot of fights. I won some and I lost some, but I got into a lot of fights, and, all while, I had this feeling inside that, way deep down that I couldn't connect to, that I wanted to be loved. But you know what? I wanted to be feared more, because through that, then I no longer was going to be abused by you. So as I walk forward, I'm shooting dope, I'm cooking meth, I'm doing all the things that come with that lifestyle. And on January 20th of 2002, I was underneath a bridge next to the Jewish cemetery wearing a white T-shirt and a wife beater and a pair of sweatpants rolled up to my knees underneath the bridge, cooking a batch of meth, looking like I had Tourette syndrome. And I'm getting close to the end there, and all of a sudden, boom, there's a cop above me, and he was like, "What are you doing?" And I threw the bowl, and I started swearing, and I was like, I look up, "Fishing?" And he was like, "Hey, man, you need to come up here." And I'm so high, I hid some of the chemicals underneath the bridge, and I carried up the glassware. And he told me they were going to give me a ride, and I tried to bring the meth lab into the back of the car. And he's like, "No, you need to set that down." And I get in the back of the car, I get in the back of the squad car, and I hear over the radio that we need vice narcotics here, and the 2 guys that showed up, Officer Champlain and Officer Nordberg, they had been chasing us for a long time. When you're getting high and you're talking about, the feds are here, like, you think the feds are there? No, they were actually there, and they were be sitting across the road from us, they were actually there, and, they came to me in that car. And they opened up the door, and I was in tears, man. And, they were like, and I said, "I'm just glad it's over," because how I had been living at that point, when I started getting high, it was fun. I still remember the first time doing the meth that I was cooking and going, "Man, why is this stuff illegal? This is amazing." I'm getting high and I'm going to treatment. I always said I did my best treatment work, wanged out on Joel Clark's bar, and, I'd go to treatment. I remember the drug counselor, I graduated, and he was like, oh my God, you've done so amazing. You're just so transformed, and he's like, we just need a UA from you so you can graduate. And I started crying, and I pulled off my jacket, and I showed him the needle holes in my arms. And he was like, oh my God, when did this start happening? And I was like, the whole time I've been here, because I was an actor, I was an actor. I played a part. And I played a lot of parts in my life, and through playing those parts and being who I was, I ended up back in that squad car. That's where my addiction takes me. It takes me to a place of acting as if, or being as if, or being somebody that is trying to escape life. And I ended up back in that squad car. And I went to the jail, and they recorded me in the, this is funny. It's funny how you remember different stuff as you're telling this story again.
It's a lot of years, bro.
Yeah. So they put me in the room, and I'm counting out the needle holes, and I'm telling them I don't live in the real world. I live in the game, and you're judged from 1 to 10 depending on how heartless you are, and there's no such things as halfway crooks, and this and that. And they're like, yeah, okay, bud. And I told him, I was like, I can't go into solitary confinement. I can't go in there. I mean, I was shooting a lot of dope. I had an unlimited free supply, and it was raw. And so they sent me to the mental ward at St. Luke's across the street in Duluth. And they're like, yeah, we're not taking that fucker. You can take him back to jail. So here I am, the mental ward won't take me. And I remember they put me in my receiver cell, and I remember sitting on my bed, and I remember the dwarfs growing out of the concrete with the little mushrooms and the light, and I was like, yeah, I should probably fucking go to sleep. I
remember those.
I did, and I got up, and I ended up back in one of the blocks, and Douglas County Jail was like my second home. I knew all the jailers. I knew about their lives. I knew they practically just handed me a mattress and a pillow. In fact, when I got checked for HIV and hepatitis, because I'm an IV user, they brought out my file. The nurses did, and it was actually 2 files, and we read through all my intakes, and there was one time where I was all wasted, and I told them that I was allergic to this, I was allergic to that. There was a time where I told them I had HIV. You know what I mean? Like, you just never know what Ken is going to show up using. And they got to see the brunt of my addiction, and I went back, and thank God I ended up with a private attorney. Because there was other people that had cases that were involved with me, so they couldn't give me a public defender. And this lady was an ex-federal attorney. She was amazing. Thank God, because my first plea bargain that they offered me was 25 years. 10 years in prison, have to do every day. 15 years extended supervision, have to do every day. In Wisconsin, they have truth in sentencing. They give you what's called a bi-bifurcated sentence, time in, time out. And I'm like, oh, man, like, you want to talk about a reality check, And the second one was about 15 years, 5 in, 10 out. And I was like, oh, man, and she kept working for me, because so many people in my life, they saw things inside of me that I couldn't see in myself, And, they came back with 8 years, 2 in. I'm like, where do I sign? And I went to prison, and it's kind of where I started having these awakenings, these spiritual experiences. And one of the most powerful things that I can say to anybody that's listening is, no matter what happens, keep moving forward. Just never know where you're going to end up. It's about living in the moment, but sometimes it's also about pushing through the moment when the moment is uncomfortable. And I was walking around the prison yard. I think I was 288 pounds at that time.
Jesus.
And I was always just laying around and eating food and leeching money from my family. I was being a drug addict without drugs, and I was walking around the yard, and the thought hit me that this isn't so bad. This isn't so bad. Here I am away from my family, all the people that love me. I'm around people that I really don't have a lot in common with other than we're criminals. Some of the crimes of the people, that I was doing time with, I had a really hard time with it, and so I made a decision. I didn't know about the third step. I may have read it on a wall when I was in treatment, but I didn't know that I had made a decision to do something different, and I was willing to do whatever it took to have something different happen in my life. Because, you see these guys and they wait till they get out of prison, and they're going to start when they get out. But see, for me, it's about a premeditative pattern of behavior that I start now is going to be that pattern of behavior that continues when I get out. So I got 2 jobs making 33 cents an hour. I started getting up 5 days a week and running every morning. I lost 80 something pounds. I started saving money, sending $10 every time I got paid home, 33 cents an hour. But you want to know what? I started being a grown-up. I started becoming who I thought, or what I didn't even know what a grown-up really was, And, I got out of prison, and they told me, you'll be back. And I said, no, I won't. I will not be back. But I will tell you, when I walked out of that gate, I was stark, raving insane. I was more dangerous than I ever was using drugs, because alcohol and dope, they were my solution. I say it all the time when I'm in meetings. If I'm in NA or CMA, I say I'm a drug addict and my problem is Ken. If I'm in AA, I say an alcoholic and my problem is Ken. Because the problem has never been drugs and alcohol. The problem has been my own mind. The problem has been my internal condition. How do I show up to life? How do I feel about life? The fear, the insecurity, all the feelings that I have that I'm not good enough, but I'm going to show you that I'm better than you. These were all the problem. And as soon as I drank alcohol or I did drugs, it brought me into the moment. It took all those things away from me. It allowed me to be connected to life. But at some point, drugs and alcohol stopped doing things for me, and they started doing things to me. And that was this line. There was this line. It was like I became that hard-ass person that I always wanted to be. And guess what? When I got to that place, I no longer wanted to be that person, And so when I got out of prison, here I am. I'm the same drug addict and the same alcoholic, and I don't have a solution. I do not have a solution. But I had a pattern. And so what I did was I got up and I started running every morning, And I always had a plan. My mom wanted me to do it this way, and I said, no, Mom, I got a plan. I'm going to do it this way, So anyways, I was lifting weights and you want to talk about anger. I remember squatting one morning, and I remember coming out of this squat and using this dude that I knew and picturing on killing him. You know what I mean? And, that's what my addiction looks like without a spiritual solution. I'm probably going to think about killing you. At some point in our relationship, if you do something fucked up to me, I'm probably going to think about killing you, and thank God I have a spiritual way of life today, but I got out and, I knew to go back to the program. I got a sponsor. His name was Toby, and he was amazing. He was like my dad in AA, you know what I mean? But he started taking me through the big book, and thank God, I didn't have the ability to be aware at that point, but he started taking me through the steps through the very beginning of the book. And I still remember him telling me to read the doctor's opinion in the first 8 pages of the Bill's story. And I called him up and I told him, Toby, this shit doesn't apply to me. And he was like, Junior, he called me Junior, you better reread it. And I didn't get it. I still didn't get it. And I stayed that way for about 10 months. I stayed that way for about 10 months. I had some really bad situations. When I was younger, my mom, she did the best she could with what she had, but, she was in a lot of pain herself, and hurt people, and my mom did a lot of things that hurt, but one morning, she pushed me, and I told her, I was like, why don't you beat me like you did when I was a kid? Because I will dog stomp you in this kitchen. I will stomp you. I told my mom this, the person who gave life to me, and man, you want to talk about pain without a solution. I used to sit in my mom's house and listen to Tool and punch myself in the face. I literally sat there and punched myself in the face. because I just had a really hard time with life and I was really angry and I didn't have a solution. And here it is, Toby's offering me this way of life and he's offering me this solution and I can't see it. I can't see it at that point. There's a part in that book that says men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. And that is the creme de la creme of my life. I love the effect produced by alcohol and dope. The feeling is so elusive or tricky, that they continue on. They cannot differentiate the true from the false. Their alcoholic dope-fiend life seems like the only normal one. They are restless, irritable, and discontent unless they can again find the ease and comfort which comes by taking a few drinks. Drinks they see others taking with impunity. After succumbing to the desire again, they pass through the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful with a firm resolution never to drink again. This is repeated over and over unless they can have an entire psychic change. That was my life. I couldn't see it at that point. So I had to have a lot more pain and a lot more, bottom. Bottom's when I stopped digging. Because I will dig a big ass hole. And then guess what? I will dig a bigger hole.
Yeah.
And I hear all the time is like, if you might get drunk and die. That's only if you're lucky sometimes. It's not you that no longer has the problem. You no longer have that problem. It's your family that's stuck with that problem. That's the painful part of this. But if you get lucky enough to get high and die, it's over for you. But I was also told that I would be an example in this program, and whether it was a good one or whether it was a poor one would be my choice. Do I want to be that example? Do I want my family to get that phone call? No, I don't. I want, when they bury me, to say he was a good member of Alcoholics Anonymous. He was a good member in recovery. He was somebody that did everything that he could to help those who were around him. That's the example that I want to be in this program. So guess what? That means I got to get going. I got to do some things. I got to work. I got to keep moving forward. And I got loaded after 10 months being on the streets. And, it's funny how your story shifts. I used to say this all the time. It's like, I got sober myself. No, what I did was I beat the parole agent to the punch because I'm facing another 72 months in prison, And again, that's the story that I have. It does not matter the consequence that I may face from getting loaded. If I am so uncomfortable inside that I cannot take it, I will get loaded. And I was explaining this to you yesterday. People say, they talk about choice, the choice to get loaded. Do you think that I ever chose to trade in my family? I never lost anything. I traded it in. Do you think that I chose to want to go to prison or chose to cook meth underneath the bridge, chose to serve people drugs to help them to destroy their life? I didn't make choices. I was wrapped up in something because I was so disgruntled inside. So for me, the choice is to work a spiritual program, because if I'm living spiritual and helping others, I will never get loaded. That's not a choice. But if I'm not choosing to live a spiritual program, I have no choice but to get loaded, or to be so absolutely miserable that I'm going to tear everything and everyone up in my life, or I'm going to make a permanent decision for a temporary problem, which is to blow my brains out. And so as I'm walking through this and I'm getting loaded, and then I go to treatment, I had another sponsor. Bill told me, he's like, get on your knees. Thank God for waking you up sober. Read the doctor's opinion, Bill's story. There is a solution, and more about alcoholism every day. Get on your knees and thank God for another day of sobriety. And I said, but Bill, that ain't going to work. He's like, why don't you just shut the fuck up and do it? And that's where I was at that point. And it was so funny because Toby, he had called me when I had relapsed, and I still remember where I was sitting to that day. See, at this point in my life, I needed that hardcore direction. That changed later on in my story, but at that point, that was the only thing I was going to hear. Shut the fuck up and do it. And when I was using during those 10 months, Toby called me and he's like, Junior, what the fuck are you doing? And I said, Toby, I'm just trying to live. He said, you ain't living, you're existing. Why don't you do us all a favor and go off in the corner and fucking die? Now, I know people may be listening to that and they may be thinking, whoa, what, your sponsor said that? Yeah, But you want to know what? I'm sticking a needle in my arm. That's probably the only thing that is going to wake me up.
Yes.
And I did get sober shortly after that. I'm not saying it was directly related, but I still remember that today because it's what I heard. And the message that I take from that is live your life. Don't just exist in it. Because when I'm getting loaded, that's all I'm doing is existing. I'm not living. I'm not seeing all these things that are around me that I talked about that was the spiritual way of life that I have. I can't hear you. I can't feel you. I can't be connected to you. The only thing that I can do is trudge forward and look for my next high to feel better than what I feel when I'm not high. You know? And so as I'm in treatment, you know, I started doing that. And I amassed almost 5 years of sobriety. It's funny how when you take direction from somebody that's had a little success, that things change.
Interesting.
But you want to hear? This is the fun. This is the one of the craziest parts of my story. So both of those sponsors ended up loaded. Toby ended up loaded with 15 years of sobriety. During those 4 years, he would call me, and he'd be so loaded that I couldn't understand what he was saying. He was taking pills. They cut off one of his legs through diabetes because he didn't take care of his physical health. You know, this is about mind, body, and spirit in this program. It isn't just about going to meetings and working the steps. It's about the physical health, the mental health. You know, and he called me and he was so loaded, man. It sucked so bad. And he wouldn't remember calling me, you know, and he died. He fucking died loaded. And one of the biggest regrets that I ever had was he called and I missed his call and I didn't call him back. And he died. And then his brother tried to call me and I missed that call and I don't know where he's buried. I don't know nothing. I found his brother and his sister on Facebook, but I'm not friends with him. I can't send him a friend. I sent him messages and I can't find his grave. Here was this man that had taught me so much. He had taught me so many things about this program, and he died loaded. Like, that's tough, you know. And I used to ride a real high horse in AA. You know, when I was sober those years before, and I got loaded. And I expected to die that way, like Toby. You know, there's nothing worse than a head full of AA and a belly full of booze. When you know another way of life, but you can't bring yourself to achieve that way of life because you're so broken inside, it's tough. You know, it's tough. And so I started on that way, and I'm loaded. You know, you want to talk about, you know, digging holes deeper. I went down rabbit holes that I never expected to go down when I got loaded again. And that's coming from somebody that did time in prison. I did 46 months altogether between prison and jail. You know, I'm an IV meth user. I'm a meth cook. You know, I will tell you that I got sober and then I got loaded and I dug the hole way deeper than I ever thought was possible. And I expected to die that way. You know, and I ended up back in Superior. You know, I'm the guy that wants to be the best. End up next to the guy that doesn't speak English. I'm getting plugged. You know what I mean? I got dreams. You know, again, you know, there's a part in the big book that talks about the fierce determination to win came back. I had arrived. That worked again for a couple months. You know, and within a couple months, it was worse than it had ever been. You know, and I got next to that dude. You know, and you know, thank God. I'm not the guy that's going to sit here and tell you that drugs and alcohol are horrible. Drugs and alcohol saved my life. They saved my life because without drugs and alcohol, number one, I probably would have killed myself because I was absolutely insane. You know, number two, they helped condition me to be the man that I am today. I hear all the time people talk about, I'm so glad I never shot up. I think, thank God I shot up. I have that absolute hard head, determined, full of ego. And you want to know what? It's really hard to say you're a social IV meth user. People talk about, you know, go to the bar and try some controlled drinking. Well, I don't even know. How do you try controlled IV meth use? It's kind of 0 to 100 real fast.
I don't even know what that looks like.
Right. And so thank God, because it beat me down, and it continued to beat me down for the next 20 months. Since 2002, I have used for probably 28 months or 30 months out of, 16 years. In 16 years, I've used for three years. Now, I know it's about continuous sobriety. That's what we talk about in here. And people say, I have to start over. How do you start over from an experience? I didn't lose the last 16 years because I got loaded twice. I continued to move forward. I continued to become this man that I am today. But what I didn't understand was when I got loaded after those 4 years and 9 months, is I had all sorts of things, again, that I'm not aware of. I got an eating disorder that is untreated. I got mental health issues that are untreated. I got sex abuse that had went on in my life. I have physical abuse that had went on in my life. And I thought I worked on those things, and I did work on them to whatever capacity was possible for me to work on those things at that point. But I was big again. I had blown back up, and I'm taking pre-workout pills, and my mental health. I had so many good doctors that were in my life, but they didn't understand what was going on. And that's one of the things that I learned. I started to research. I started to find my own answers. And this doctor, he told me something once that absolutely blew my mind, because I thought the doctor was up here and I was down here. And I told him, when I sat in that room that day, because I was dying of mental illness. And they were just, the other ladies, the people, they were pumping me full of pills. You know what I mean? And I thought that they were going to fix me. And I took those pills and I expected to be fixed. And what happened was I wasn't listening to my body, and I was getting sick. And the doctor, I said, I feel as if, you're not going to understand me. And he looked at me and he said, do you know that's one of the most common fears in the world? To not be heard or to be understood? And he's like, this isn't about me telling you what to do. This is about me and you doing it together, making decisions. And that is a metaphor for my whole life. I take into account other people's feelings and that we do this together. But in the end, this is about me. There's no bunk beds and caskets. We ain't going to get laid to rest together, And so the things that I didn't understand, they created this storm inside of me. And again, I became so uncomfortable. I accidentally took a drink. I will prerequisite that as a footnote that I was in a strip club. That'll tell you what my spiritual condition looked like, because the ego had taken back over, because I got all these things going on inside and I need something to feel better, and I'm not using drugs and alcohol. So what I did was I used a strip club, because the strippers were my friends. They would pay for me to get in. I'm like Big Dad sitting on the back of the bar. I'm feeding my ego. And I reached over and I actually took a drink and I spit it out. I didn't even drink it, but I looked at old girl when she got out of the bathroom and I was like, I'll be back. And when I got back, she was like, damn, you're fucking loaded. And I was like, you're fucking ain't right. And I was on a run, But those things that were inside, these mental health issues, all of these things, and not being aware, I probably could have walked through them sober. I don't know. That's not my story. I will say that that's my story today, because when I got sober again, I walked into court that day. I'd been on the run. I'm shooting dope. I'm coming back and forth to Minneapolis because on December 25th, I did a fatal shot of heroin and meth, and I dropped dead and turned blue. I had a gun on me. Thank God they never found the gun. Mandatory minimum sentence of 10 years of a felon in commission of a drug crime with a weapon, And that's how God has continued to show up in my life. God has continued to guide me, even though I've made mistakes based on self to walk me off that path. Even when I walked me off that path, there was still something that was continuing to watch over me. I got out of the ICU. I got back to my house, and I basically shot up on the same spot I died with the same needle. You know what I'm saying? So that's how I'm living. I'm going back and forth to court now on that case. I'd been on the run a long time. They picked me up in Superior, thank God. I'm jumping in and out of cars because I'm so high. Me and my girlfriend are fighting. She can't stop having me stick a needle in her arm. I'm sticking a needle in my arm. I'm telling her it's death as I'm shooting up myself. It's just the madness, And I ended up getting sober, again. That was the 19th of April. I gave up that day. By the way, I was so high, my lawyer said I was going to get a Rule 25. They were going to pay for my treatment, and I thought she meant right then. That was a little high. But anyways, I figuratively put my hands in the air. And I said, I'm going to jail today. I actually put my hands behind my back, and they put cuffs on me. And I cried. I once again cried. I'm not ashamed to admit, that I cry. I'm very grateful that I cry. I've cried in the last 2 days, and I haven't cried in a long time. And I'll get to what my current experience is with where I'm at with recovery in life right now. But I got out of jail, and you want to talk about the fierce determination to win? I get out of jail. All my stuff's in Superior. I got no phone. I got no phone numbers. Thank God during those 4 years, I rode an awful high horse, and I sponsored a lot of guys, and some of them became my best friends, and they stayed sober and bought houses. And they had families, and they had cars, and they had jobs. And I went and I got on my Google account. I found the number. I called one of my buddies, John. He said if I could get to Fridley, pick me up. But I was so anxious and whatever, I was going to get loaded. I had heard that they were selling K2, and the 18 bus would take me there, And I'm just disgruntled, and I'm walking around downtown, and I didn't know downtown. All those years that I lived here, I never really figured out downtown. And I said a prayer to God. I said, God, if you help me, I will do whatever it is. So if the 18 shows up, I'm going to get loaded. If the 10 shows up that takes me to the Fridley Alano, I'm going to stay sober. I'm making bargains with God here.
Of course.
Yeah. Guess what? The 10U showed up. The 10 University bus, which drops me right in front of the Fridley Alano. And I got to the Fridley Alano, and I got in the parking lot, and I got on my knees, and I said, I'm home. Thank you, God. And then that's when the real work started. So I got these mental health issues. I got all these things going on. I got a good job that involved an apartment. I get that apartment. I start eating. And I was eating anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000 calories a day. I gained maybe 130, 140 pounds in that time. I was 368 pounds. Jesus. And I started researching diet pills again. I started looking for whatever that path was going to be. I went and I took the same medication that I was taking before. I have OCD. And they were giving me SSRIs to help the OCD. But really underneath the OCD, I was bipolar. And I'd been told that I was bipolar, but I'd never been treated for it because I didn't believe that I had it. So they're treating me with these other medications, and I'm eating, and I'm miserable, and I start researching diet pills again. And, I'm driving down the road one day, and I see a billboard. And I always say this. I'm not sure if this is the one that it said or not, but it said, "Is food eating you?" And it was an Emily program. And I went to the Emily program, and I met Christy Humberding. And she was an amazing woman in my life. And I cried really hard the last time I talked about her. Because you want to know what? Without that woman's guidance and direction, I don't know that I'd be who I am today. And it was transformative. But the point was I showed up to therapy every week. I did IOP. They told me things like, how can I best support you in your decision for change? What are you talking about? I'd always been to that. You're going to do this. Get on your knees and thank God. And I expected that when I went there, but they showed me the loving kindness that I couldn't show myself because I was still so full of ego and still such a scared little boy inside. And I started to work on things. I started to work on the sexual abuse, and I started to work on the cognitive behavior that was involved with the food issues. I met a woman who was a psychiatrist, and she wasn't trying to shove pills down my throat because I'd gotten off the pills. Because I had a 3-month anxiety attack, and here I live in North Minneapolis. I can open up the window and say, "Hey, bro, bring me some rock. And bring one of them toothless girls with you, too." I live right next to the Union Liquor Store. I ain't even got to get out of my house shoes to go and get a drink, But then I started a holistic path because I started reading things, and I started figuring things out for myself, and I got off the SSRIs, and that went away because here I am. I remember sitting in the white van, the white work van, and I'm thinking about drinking, and I know drinking is not a solution. I hear all the time, using isn't an option for me. I'm like, what kind of drug addict are you? Using is always an option for me. It's not a solution. Because as soon as I wake up, I'm going to have the same fucking problem that I had when I got loaded. So I'm sitting in the van. I'm thinking about drinking. And my next thought is I should just fucking kill myself. Another permanent solution to a temporary problem. But at that moment, I cannot see that it is a temporary problem. All I can see is I am so filled with anxiety that I am losing touch with reality. And this happened day in and day out for almost 3 months because I was having an adverse reaction to the SSRI. Well-meaning doctors pumping me full of pills and it's not working, you know? And so I did the holistic thing. I took these pills, I drank this tea, and it went away. And then about 2 months later, I had an acute manic episode for the first time in my life. 4 days, I was so absolutely high that my skin felt like it was splitting. I couldn't stop talking. I wouldn't have slept if I was. I had to go and drink Theraflu to go to sleep every night. And if I wouldn't have done that, and I went to go get loaded, because here I am, it's not a solution, but guess what? I don't want to kill myself, so I ain't got no choice but to get loaded in my mind, because this has to go away. And I prayed. I ain't gonna lie, I prayed. I said, God, please save me. And you want to know what? That night I didn't get loaded. And then I went back to that doctor because my buddy Terry, you know, we do this thing in recovery. And when I was coming back from Superior, I didn't even know I was setting myself up to get loaded. I had set it all up with my family. I'm like, I got these mental health issues and da-da-da-da-da. And I'm working this story up. And I remember leaving the Dairy Queen and buying a Arctic Freeze with lemon lime. You know, I remember these things so crystal clear because at that moment, something pierced my mental health issues. And my buddy Terry said, are you willing to get a new sponsor and have a new experience? And I said, no. I said, no. Here I am in so much pain that if he would have told me I should dance in the street naked, who am I to say no unless I really want to get loaded? So it was at that moment that I knew, because I knew that my problem wasn't spiritual. My problem was organic. You know, I hear in the program all the time, if you're on psychiatric drugs, you're not sober. Bullshit. If I ain't taking these drugs, I can't even hear what you're saying. And I'm probably going to get loaded. And that's my experience. I don't like taking the drugs. I hate taking the drugs. You know, but without those drugs, I can't even hear what AA or a spiritual message is saying. God might be talking to me, but he might be telling me some funny shit. Because really, it's my own head. And I knew at that point that I had to go back to that doctor. And thank God all those people in that program said, how can I best support you instead of you need to do this? And I started back on a medication regimen. And I will tell you that was not easy. I had my hands went numb. I felt like I was disconnected. I wasn't my own person in reality, you know? And it was difficult. It was extremely difficult. But I did it. And I will tell you, I'm on a medication regimen today. I have very little side effects, and I'm somewhat what you would call stable. You know, some people in this room might not agree with that.
I see it.
Yeah, but I'm more stable than I've ever been in my life, and thank God for medication, and thank God for the Emily program. You know, so, you know, as I walked through this time in recovery, you know, I shared a lot of what it was like. I want to share what the gifts have been. You know, I want to tell you the things that I have done to end up where I've ended up, and then the gifts that I've been given, you know, through this walk in recovery. So I started EMDR. I've done OCD treatment, which was a game changer. I was not the same person. I had fought it for so long, but I did it. And I will tell you that it changed my life. OCD, people make fun of it. They think it's funny. I used to have to kiss the ground in the right order so that God wouldn't strike me dead. You start wrapping OCD up with spirituality, and it's crazy. I start switching white T-shirts. They're out of the same pack. They're brand new. I can't decide which one to wear. I go up the stairs. I go down the stairs. And before I know it, I'm going to kill myself. I can't take this anymore. So completing that treatment and the medication, they've saved my life. Doing EMDR to start to break up the trauma. You know, I operate from a place of trauma today. Still in my life, I operate from a place of trauma. You know, I was so used to pushing through all the things in my life that I didn't even recognize it as trauma. There were just things that happened because what I had thought was if I say that this happened, so I ended up here, I was making an excuse for what I did in life. But it's not true. They were reasons. I can still accept responsibility as an adult, but also understand that there's reasons why I ended up who I ended up as an adult. And so I began this process at EMDR, which is I can't remember the exact name of it, but it breaks apart the memories in your mind that are traumatic and allows you to refile them away. It's been 2 years getting my bipolar under control. You have to have your bipolar under control so that you can do the therapy. I finally had started it, a little while ago, and then my work and all this kind of stuff has taken over. So even in the few treatments that I've had, it's absolutely changed my life. So I'm stable. I'm on medication. I'm working on the EMDR. I do 12-step recovery. Thank God, sometimes you meet people in life, that you date and it doesn't work out, but something amazing happens. And I dated this woman, and she introduced me to the 12-step recovery program, and she introduced me to the creator of that program in Minnesota. Her name is Suzula Badan. And this woman has absolutely just been something else in my life. She's taught me what it is to be centered. She's taught me what it is to be in integrity and to breath. I show up early. I set up the candles. I stay late. I clean up the yoga program because that's what this program has given me. It's given me the ability to show up for my family. It's given me the ability to show up for other drug addicts and alcoholics. It's given me the ability to show up to work every day even though I don't like my job. It's given me the ability to be able to make sane and rational, unemotional decisions. It's given me that ability. So we got all these people, Dr. Melcher, we got Christy Hubbarding, we got Suzula Badan, we got all these people, we got Toby, we got Bill Downs, we got all these people, we got Ben Dossman and Renee Dossman, who are the people that gave me the opportunity to have the job and to create the skill set that I have today. They've taken so much time out of their life to help me succeed, because I went from that guy who was highly intelligent but didn't apply himself except to doing something wrong to doing something right. And they saw it inside of me. And they gave me an opportunity. And I took that opportunity. And I used that opportunity. And I changed. You want to talk about some change. You want to talk about some power of God. I had the ability to come to Costa Rica. But you want to know what? That's just been the icing on the cake. I've been given the ability to forgive. I've been given the ability to be forgiven through doing some things. The guy I beat with a hammer, I seen him 90 days sober when I was sober before in Walmart. And I made an attempt at an amend. And he looked at me and he was like, just good to know you're not a piece of shit. And he walked away. I met him again at my 10-year class reunion. The last time that class had seen me, I was being hauled out in handcuffs for beating that man with a hammer. I talked to him the whole time that I was there. I made an amend to that man, and I wouldn't say we're friends, but I would say that we're connected in a way that most people will never understand. He probably don't even understand how many times I've told this story, how many times I've showed that God has showed up in my life because I took the right actions and that man forgave me. But you know what? The ultimate forgiveness for me, to allow that to take place, for that man to forgive me, I had to forgive other people first. Forgiveness is an inside job, and it's ultimately for me. I hate cliches, but the cliche that resentment is like a poison that you ingest and expect somebody else to die is so true. I take, for instance, the man that sexually abused me. He was my cousin. And he wasn't the first one. He wasn't the first person to act inappropriate with me sexually. But he was the most prolific one. So he lived with me when he was 19 years old and I was 12 or 13. He played this game with me, and obviously I'm curious about sex. And I think for the longest time, because this happened, that I was gay. It messed with my spirituality, my sexuality, my ideas of manhood. It took me till I was like 16, 17 years old to realize, fuck, I like women. I am not gay because this happened to me, But all of these things happened, and I woke up at night, and he began raping me, in my sleep. And for a lot of years that fueled my addiction. It fueled my anger. It began to give me justification to do things like beating people with hammers, to punching people, to, I still remember this girl one time. I was sitting around, we're getting high, and she didn't know my name. My nickname at home is Skinny. It's my alter ego when I'm in the streets. And somebody said my name, and this look of terror come across her face. And she was like, "That's you? I've been talking to you. I just thought you were a heartless asshole." Wow. Wow. And I'm not directly blaming the sexual abuse for me beginning to abuse other people, but you look at the pattern of behavior that's in your life. Hurt people. And I was hurt. And so I hurt people, even when I didn't want to. I still remember punching a guy when I got out of prison and trying to hug him because I felt so bad that I just knocked him out. But I'm angry. And fuck you. You don't know me. You better check my resume. Because I'm so filled with ego. And I'm not saying these things are directly correlated, but what I am saying is hurt people. So I got this cousin who did these things to me, and I don't ever see him after he moves out. You know what I mean? And so my grandma, I knew that I would never see him again until my grandma died, and that he would be at his funeral. And I still remember being all wanged out and calling my mom or my dad and his girlfriend and telling them what happened. And they were all, "Oh, we're going to get you help, and we're going to this and we're going to that." And I still remember my dad saying to me, "But wait till grandma dies." What does my grandma have to do with this? And I love my dad. My dad's been my superhero, my idol, my whole life, So I'm not saying anything other than, at this moment, though, I felt that pain. That pain of like, this is about me and what this dude did to me and why I ended up this way. And I felt as if it got swept under the rug. But you want to know what? I'm so grateful that it happened that way. Because had my grandma died, this is 2000, 2001. My grandma died like 18, 19 years old. In my family, we gangsters. My grandma made it to the bitter end. She was born on February 6th or 7th, 1932. She just died right at my 4 years, which was 2 years ago. So 2016. So thank God that this happened. I hadn't seen this man in 20 plus years. I didn't even know if he was going to be there. And I also, in the other interview, we talked about my tattoos and stuff and, being in Costa Rica and, I have this tattoo that's wrapped around my neck and, I didn't intend to be able to see it above my shirt line, but I picked a shirt line and, I didn't actually put a shirt on. Kind of one of the stories of my life. I think I know what I'm doing and I do something and it ends up not to be quite right. But the word says dichotomic. And what dichotomy is this duality of state of being inside or anything in life. I have other tattoos on my arms that say freedom and bondage. It's that old adage of the two wolves. They're both part of me, but which one do I feed? Because the one that I feed is the one that will have power over my life. So I don't know if my cousin's going to be there, and I always wondered what would happen when he showed up. Because somewhere along the way, through therapy, through working steps, through being forgiven by that guy, that I beat with the hammer, by being forgiven by him, I had learned the power of forgiveness. God had showed up in my life, and somewhere along the way, I went from having all these thoughts of doing all these things to him to forgiving him. But until you meet somebody face to face and you hold them accountable, you know what I mean? Like there's not a close to that chapter for me, So I don't know which guy is going to show up, this loving, caring, forgiving recovery guy or this guy that is extremely prone and has a propensatory idea or physical towards violence. Because I'm going to tell you, in my life, by this point, he's nothing. He's nothing if I decide to turn that switch. It's over for him. I'm going to walk through him, and it's going to be a bloody mess, And so I don't know which guy is going to show up because I know the guy that I am, but I also know that this pattern of behavior has been there for a long time, and this is an extremely emotional thing for me. And so I'm in the parking lot at my grandma's funeral because guess what I do? I show up early. Why do I show up early? To be of support to my father. This is his mother. He's in a lot of pain. I show up for my family. I show up to be a part of my family because that's where recovery's given me. And I'm in the parking lot and there he is. Ooh, my stomach dropped. My stomach dropped. I'm like, there he is. And I was on my way to McDonald's. I go to McDonald's. I call my buddy. My buddy's like, don't do nothing stupid. I'm like, you know what, man? I think I feel all right. So I go back into the funeral home. And there he is with his little 10-year-old daughter. And I told you this yesterday, and I'll tell you with the same. You can see my face light up. I don't remember what her name was, but I just remember she was a character. She's about 10 years old, you know, and immediately we start talking shit. You know what I'm saying? Because I love little kids that talk shit, because I will talk shit all day long. I just love antagonizing them. You know, and she antagonized me right back. Before you know it, she's got Snapchat filters and putting grandma hats and pearl necklaces on these pictures of me, and we're having a good time. But now it's time to get serious because I've started that energy, and her dad is there, and he's my abuser. And I look him in his eyes, and I said, "You're Emery, right?" And he was like, "Yeah." I was like, "Why don't you come talk to me?" So I pull him in another side of the funeral home, and I look him in his eyes, and I say, "Emery, you remember living with my dad when I was a kid?" He said, "Yeah." I was like, "You remember molesting me?" He was like, "No." And I said, "But you did." And he gave me this response, and he said something to the effect of, you know, "If you think that I did that, then I'm sorry." And I looked him in his eyes and I say, "You know what you did and I know what you did, and it doesn't matter because I forgive you. I forgive you." And this look walked across his eyes, and it looked like he remembered. Because I don't think he really remembered. You know, he sent me a friend request on Facebook the day before. I don't know that a person that actively knows that he was raping another young boy would do that. But I watched this look walk across his face, and I saw it. I saw pain in his eyes, and he said, "I'm so sorry for what I did to you." And I don't remember if he said it to me or if I said it to him, but one of us said, "Can we hug?" And we hugged. I hugged that man. This man that raped me. I hugged him. I really, really forgave him. And then I got the opportunity to close out my grandma's funeral. What an amazing deal. I closed out her funeral, and then we went to dinner. And here it is. You want to know, you talk about family dynamics. I love my mom and my dad and his girlfriend. They stuck by me through shit that I wouldn't have stuck by me through because they loved me and I loved them. But you want to talk about some shit? They ostracized him. They wouldn't talk to him. And I'm like, you don't even know the spiritual experience that I just had with this man, because it's not for them to understand. But I'm looking at them, and I'm not going to let him feel as if he's not a part of. He don't know anybody but them, and they won't talk to him. So here he is at the end of the table having dinner with his daughter. You know what I did? I went and got my plate. I walked past my family, and I sat with him. And I had dinner with him. And I asked him about his life. I asked his daughter about her life. And then we got up from that table. And I know he was thinking, what the hell is going on? Because I don't have to talk about AA. I don't have to tell you I'm spiritual. It's by how I show up that you will know whether or not it is that I'm spiritual. If I'm and that can ebb and flow, let me tell you. Because there's some days where you're like, whoa, bud, you should probably go to a meeting and pray. you should probably do something, you know. But then I got up from that table, you know, and I hugged that dude. And we told each other we loved each other. And we walked away. And that chapter of my life is closed. But you know how it's not closed? In this sense, I sit up on podiums and I talk about this. Because in this program, we think about mental illness. We think about eating disorders. And you go to some meetings and they're like, just work the steps and everything will be better. That's not true. If I don't work the steps, I'm probably not going to have a transformation. But if I have an eating disorder, you know where I'm going to go? The Emily program. The Melrose program, somebody that's specializing in eating disorders. If I have mental health issues, I am not going to go to my sponsor and ask him which mental health medications should I be taking. I'm going to go to a psychiatrist. And if that psychiatrist doesn't fit, then I'm going to find another psychiatrist. And if that one doesn't fit, I'm going to find another psychiatrist. I'm going to find that person that talks about me and you doing this together. You know? If I have problems with work development, I'm going to go to a career development program. I'm going to have all sorts of connections in the program that are maybe able to help me and to assist me, but I'm going to go to those that know what is going on. You know? And that's the powerful piece of this program, what it has given me. That is the freedom that it has given me from actually working the steps. I was able to be forgiven. I was able to forgive. I was able to be free from those things. I was able to walk forward. I was able to use the resources that were around me. How amazing is that? So then you talk about what is the cream on the cake. I have been to multiple countries. I have planned, this is my first vacation. I've made decisions to do things, and I've done them. 6 months ago, I decided I was going to lose weight because I had weight loss surgery and I lost 138 pounds. Got in a motorcycle wreck, should have died doing 60 or 70 down the road, not wearing a helmet. Head never touches the ground. In a level 1 trauma, right? Walked out 3 days later, not even happy to be alive, saying I wish I would have died because of my mental health issues. All of a sudden, something happened because of that accident and it broke. You know, so I shouldn't even be alive. But what happened was I started smoking cigarettes. I started drinking energy drinks. I'm doing this job and I'm getting way off track. You know, you talk about the mind, the body, and the spirit, you know, and I got off track. And 6 months ago, I decided I am not going back to the guy that's 368 pounds. And I had all this stuff that these professionals had taught me. And I went back to the gym and I've lost 50 pounds. I decided I was going to go on vacation. My girlfriend didn't have a passport. I was supposed to come alone. I told her, go get a goddamn passport. Call the PO and tell them and ask them. They told her, bye. She gets her passport, bye. So I planned this vacation because I told you 6 months before that I was going to come here. Now, I debated in my head the whole time whether I was going to be here or not. But you want to know what? I fought the fear. I fought the anxiety because that's what this program gave me. And I booked the trip. And I made the trip. And because I show up to work every single day to a job that I necessarily don't care for, guess what? I had all sorts of things happen that I didn't plan financially here. And you know what I did? Whipped out my credit card, whipped out the $100 bills. Here we go, baby. You know? So through using professionals, being open, being part of life, working the steps, having all these other people that love and care for me in my life, I get to sit before you today and tell you gratitude is an action, and I'm grateful. Because if I do not act grateful, I will not feel grateful for long. So through doing that and being part of life and through living and not just existing, I get to sit here today. And that's all I got for you, bud.
Complete surrender, man. Complete surrender. We hear it over and over and over and over. It's a part of step 3.
I'm just feeling it right now. I was scared. I'm just feeling it right now.
There's nothing to be afraid of, right? No. And that's the thing about life, right? The thing about life is that there's nothing to be afraid of ever except fear itself. Mm-hmm. Fear is like anxiety, and it's just an indication that you're focusing on what you don't want. Mm-hmm. Instead of focusing on what you do want. It's right. All it is. It's just your protection. And, you know, a 3-year-old kid drinking Pepto-Bismol because he's hungry, because he doesn't know what else to do. You know, a 10-year-old kid being abused and using drugs because he realizes the minute he drinks alcohol, all the pain goes away. And it's just this temporary solution for this internal problem that I have to do a lot of work on. I did a lot of work on. So there is that whole idea that I'm going to come into recovery, and I hear you. You come in And like Ken says, the cliches, right? Like I hate the cliches,
I know,
right?
but they're so true.
All of them. Every single cliche is true. One day at a time, just for today, right? Just work the steps. And the thing is that everything that comes fast and easy disappears instantly. When it comes fast, it goes fast. It's just part of the reality. When it comes slow, it stays, it sticks. I'm not going to weigh 380, 360 pounds and decide I'm going to go to the gym right now and I'm going to lose 130 pounds this week.
Hey, that's like people get ready to go on vacation the week before to lose weight. They try to starve themselves or whatever. Dude, 6 months ago, I made that decision. I made it for myself, but through that hard work, I got to walk around the beach with my shirt off for the first time in a long time.
In a long time.
Yeah.
That feels good.
Yeah. And you know what's so crazy is, as we're talking, I just think about what your wife said. And I only had a brief moment to meet her, and she has a really calm spirit.
Yes.
Us whacked out drug addicts, dude, I paid my cell phone bill, I remember, and I told Toby that, and he was like, "Oh, Junior, good fucking job. Welcome to what everybody has been doing their whole life. You want a pat on the back?" But we have to, do all these things, to be connected, to learn these spiritual things. And your wife just looks at you and says, she's not even in recovery, right? She looks at you and says, "Well, obviously, that's not part of his journey." What the hell? How are you just born that way? I've had to do thousands of hours of therapy, millions of hours in meetings, and I still can't get to that because I'm not a slow learner. I'm a fast forgetter all the time. And here she is his journey is not complete. I'm like, that's awesome. That's so awesome,
And the best part is, like you say, you got a great anecdote when you get back to the States, because the story, and there's so many aspects of it, but it's just like your life story, right? You told it yesterday, right? And you crushed it. And you told it again today, and you crushed it. And I told you this yesterday. There is a gift deep down inside of you because you touched a place inside of me yesterday, and you touched a place inside of me today. That is so deep, and it's a place that I don't know exists because it's not my experience.
Right.
But I get to experience this through you, right? And I get to see how your experience, no matter how different,
or how the same.
It's all the same, but how it impacts my life in a positive way.
Yeah.
Right? And allows me to take that message into my life, and I get to add your tools into my toolbox. That's why we do what we do. And I told you this yesterday. You have this gift inside of you that not too many people have.
The thing is, there's no big I's and little U's in this program. It talks about in the big book, we commence this journey shoulder to shoulder. That means we are equal, even though you're shorter than me.
Yeah.
But we are equal, and we do this together. Because without this transference of energy, that's why I wanted to come here, and I didn't want to do this over Skype. Because sitting before you today, there's this transference of energy that doesn't happen. It doesn't happen unless you're open and willing. And we're both open and willing, so therefore we get to have this experience. We got to have this experience yesterday, and here we get to have this experience again today. Yesterday was just the warm-up. I was coming in with a hammer today. Oh, that was a bad...
I didn't even catch that till right now.
But I was coming in here, and here's this same fear. And you want to know what? I truly feel as if today was the message that was supposed to be heard. It was the same message as yesterday, but it was articulated in a different way. Something about today was different. Something about today, when I rapped at the end yesterday, I didn't feel tied up. I didn't feel like I had come to this pinnacle in my story, and then I had closed it down to where it was supposed to be. Today, I felt that way. I felt that closure. I felt that openness both days, and today I feel that closure.
And we've come right down to the wire because it's 9:30 right now, 9:39.
Nice.
We're about to close down this interview, and I got to get these guys to the airport by 11.
Yeah.
It's always down to the wire. Know this. Sometimes for us, it's just got to be at the wire. That's when we really kick into gear.
Dude, I work best under pressure.
Yes. It's the time's running down. We're down to the last minutes. It's go time, right? And every resource we have at our disposal just kicks in, man, because we never lose it.
No.
And like you said, I don't know who's going to show up, the good wolf or the bad wolf, but know this, they are both inside of me.
Right.
And, be grateful that I've been feeding the good wolf. I've been feeding the good wolf for a long time now. I get up in the morning, right, and I read a promise of a new day, and I connect spiritually. And no matter if I make meetings or don't make meetings, he's always with me. I'm always connected spiritually. I get up in the morning and I recognize that God is everything, right, or I am nothing, right, and that is what I carry through the day. So I know I'm 95% sure that guy, the recovery guy, is going to show up. But know this, if I need him, he's there.
Right.
Right? And that is, for me, just knowing that brings peace.
Yes.
Knowing that I don't walk this earth alone.
Yep.
That connected spiritually, and then the people that are around me, right? I've chosen those people to be connected with. I'm always safe, and I'm never alone.
Right. And whenever anything or everything is going wrong, you'll still end up in the place that you want to be if you put one foot in front of the other.
Amen, brother. And here we are. All right, so now we're going to close with the final closing questions. And I'm feeling just as like the exchange of energy, because we're right next to each other, right? So I'm feeling like, okay, it's time to close down.
Right.
All right, so Ken, tell us, for the newcomer, what was keeping you from getting clean and staying clean when you first got introduced to recovery?
My patterns of behavior and my thought process, and finding more power in the feeling of relief instead of the feeling of release that would come from recovery.
I love it. Okay, I'm going to have Kendra take a picture of us. Okay, so come over there now that we're all spent. All right, so... All right. And at what point did you have a spiritual awakening, that aha moment in recovery, when you accepted that you were powerless over drugs and alcohol, but for the first time had developed the hope that you could recover?
I'm going to tell you this right now, and I reiterated this yesterday. I kind of thought about it, and the one thing that really comes into my mind is the day that I was walking around the prison yard, and I thought, this isn't so bad. And I made a decision to do something different, not even knowing that I was doing the third step. Because from that point forward, I've never stopped moving forward. Never.
I love it. And do you have a favorite book that you would recommend to a newcomer that you read in early recovery?
Yeah, it's called The Big Book. And I always say this, I'm so...
Read it.
Yeah, don't read it. Have a sponsor take you through it and have a spiritual experience with it. Because with that book, all other things are possible.
Number 4, what is the best suggestion you have ever received?
I don't even remember what it was yesterday either.
Doesn't matter.
Oh, yeah. It's okay to make mistakes. Just start making new mistakes.
How could you forget that one?
I don't know.
We started the interview with that.
I know, right? Right.
Right before I press record, you're like, it's all right to make mistakes. Just make new ones.
Right,
man.
right.
And number 5, if you could give our newcomers only one suggestion, what would it be?
Give yourself a chance. So often in this program, we sit in this room and we don't give ourselves a chance. We're used to getting it right now, and do whatever it takes. I hear people put in the same effort into getting high that you do in your sobriety. I'm talking 1/100th of that effort, and I'll remain sober and I'll have a different life. And you know what? Continue to help others. Just thank God Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob didn't wait a year to be sober to help somebody else. They got out and they helped other people. It doesn't mean you have to be sponsoring people, but get active. Set up chairs. It just sounds so stupid. I'm going to set up chairs and make coffee and I'm going to stay sober. No. What's going to happen is you're going to get connected, and through being connected, you're going to remain sober.
Amen, brother. Amen. Ken, thank you again for joining us and for sharing your unbelievably amazing story.
Thanks for hosting me, This place is amazing, and so are you.
Love you, brother.
I love you too, man.
All right, we've now reached the end of our show. Thanks for joining us. And as we say here in Costa Rica, pura vida.
Pura vida.
Thank you for joining us on the SHAIR Recovery Podcast. To check out the show notes page on this interview or to thank our guests for sharing their story, go to www.theshairpodcast.com. While you're on the website, don't forget to sign up for our free newsletter to stay up to date on the latest news, podcasts, and interviews. Want to be one of our guests and share your story? Then go to our website and click on the Share Your Story button. We share our inspiring recovery stories every Tuesday, so subscribe to our show on iTunes or Stitcher Radio to get your free weekly download. We'll see you then. The opinions shared on this show reflect those of the individual speaker and not of any 12-Step Fellowship as a whole. And though we discuss 12-Step recovery and the impact it had in our lives, we do not promote or endorse any 12-Step Anonymous program.